Yo, 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 yo! Yakapui! Hey, welcome back. It's your boys Bukias21, and today we're going to Brazil. Let's go. So obviously, when you go into Brazil, couple phrases you want to know: hello, hola, good morning, bom dia. Oh yeah, also whenever you're speaking Portuguese, the D doesn't make a D sound. Sometimes it makes a J sound, so it's bom dia. Yeah, it's not Spanish. Good afternoon, boa tarde, and good night, boa noite. Also, whenever you're pronouncing the T next to an E, it's usually gonna make a ch sound. So it's boa noite. But yeah, so with Brazil, one of the biggest countries in the world, actually located right here on the Atlantic Sea. It actually touches most of the countries that it's next to, aside from Ecuador and Chile. But yeah, kind of popping up with the Brazilian flag. It actually is kind of similar to the imperial Brazilian flag. That obviously kind of was the flag before, but now they kind of modified it. Obviously, when you kind of ask some people like what it represents, some people say that the yellow represents the gold, green represents like the forest, trees, Amazon, everything like that, and that's not true. So with the green, this is actually a representation of the House of Braganza, which is Dom Pedro, which he was kind of pretty much like the prince, ruler of Brazil at that time. And the yellow actually represents the House of Habsburg, where his wife Dona Maria Leopoldina was actually kind of from. From here, obviously, with the center is the world, and within the world, you're gonna see a bunch of little kind of white specks. These are actually stars. These represent all the 26 states within Brazil. Some like to say 27. Correct me if I'm wrong. But with the white strip across, Ordem de Progresso, which is pretty much order in progress. Now, with the languages within Brazil, just like kind of the majority of the countries within the Americas, there's already, pretty much the indigenous tribes and things of that sort. And then obviously, most of the Americas were colonized, so you're gonna have a language from the colonists. But pretty much within the country of Brazil, there's over 230 languages spoken within this country. But obviously the main one is Portuguese. Now back then within this history, now with this country in its history, it was actually ruled and obviously colonized by Portugal for over 300 years by obviously explorer or conquistador Pedro Alvarez. And with this, obviously gaining independence, but with that, Portuguese pretty much is the main common lingua franca within the country. Now, obviously, it's not really going to be the same exact as like Portugal or other countries that do speak Portuguese. There's going to be a little bit of flavor, a little bit of its own touch to it. So just to kind of show a little differences from Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese from Portugal. Like for example, the restroom in Portugal you would say casa de banho, and in Brazilian Portuguese you would say banheiro. Also, when you're saying ice cream, you would say gelato, and then in Brazil you would say sorvete. Pineapple, ananas, and in Brazil, abacaxi. But some common phrases that you would hear in Brazil usually, like for one, is legal. Oi, que legal. Oi, que legal, legal. This is pretty much saying that, oh man, that's cool, that's sick, bro. Hey, that's sick. Oi, que legal, mano. Right? Another one you would say is fica de boa. Now, fica de boa, this is pretty much saying like, hey, calm down, chill out, relax, bro. It's gonna be all right. Just relax, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, oi, mano, fica de boa, vai dar tudo certo, right? And the third one you're gonna hear is just kind of like more of an expression, just like, oi, caramba, right? You're pretty sure most of us have heard that, right? kind of word or phrase, right? So usually like if something happens or just like, oh my gosh, or oh wow, or you know, it's kind of like an expression like, oi, ay caramba, caramba, uy caramba. Cool, yeah. And then also fun fact, there's a lot of kind of different famous Brazilians. One of my favorite one is Alex Pereira, which is obviously one of the top contenders, top champions in the UFC. He's won multiple championships, and he's actually, you know, Brazilian. But not to mention that he's actually has a lineage towards one of the indigenous tribes in Brazil, the Patacho, and his nickname is actually Poatan. Now, Poatan is pretty much meaning like stone hands, so that's obviously a great fit for him. And aside from just, you know, with his Brazilian side, he's also made it to show in the world that he comes from an indigenous tribe of the Patacho tribe there in Brazil, and he does not scare away from that at all. From this small little community in this little place in the world, and he's from the top of the class of his UFC championships. He makes sure that everybody in the world knows his indigenous roots, and it's so sick. Yeah, it's honestly, I love it, man. You know, when people kind of, you know, or even though if they're not born there, they don't speak the language or anything like that, but if they kind of, you know, get deep in there, find their roots, and just make an effort, you know, because it's part of us, you know, it is part of us. That's what we came from. It's our culture and things like that. So yeah, I'm a true believer of not shying away from your culture and things like that. Yeah, a very interesting thing within Brazil, it's pretty mixed. So usually within the southern part of Brazil, you're gonna find more of your white complected people. So right here, like Sao Paulo, stuff like that. Huge majority of Brazil is actually what's known as pardo, which is pretty much a mixture of everything. Like you're too dark to be considered white complected, and you're too light to be considered, you know, black complected. So you're pardo. So pretty much like if I go to Brazil, I'm pretty much categorized as pardo as well. And then up in the northern part, that's whenever you're gonna find more of your darker complected people, your black people. And then within the Amazons, this is where a lot of indigenous tribes have been there. There's actually a lot of tribes. Yeah, and within the Amazons, there's 80 uncharted indigenous tribes there, and there's actually certain specific tribes that even for us, you know, I mean, I guess people within civilization and stuff like that haven't even discovered. So it's very, very interesting. Within that, since we're in the Amazon, actually 60% of the entire Amazon forest is located right here in Brazil. With that, from the 10 million different species of animals that are in the entire world, half of them actually live here in the Amazon, which is so sick. I myself haven't really been to any South American country yet, but Brazil is definitely in my place. Also, so I can practice my Portuguese and just, you know, experience the whole 9 yards. Within the Brazil, obviously, you know, with deforestation and everything kind of happening within the country, there's actually been a lot of animal efforts that have brought some animals that are on the verge of, you know, that are endangered or pretty much extinct in the wild. A lot of animal efforts have actually helped brought the population and actually put them back into their natural habitat. Some of the species you can see is like the pirarucu or the arapaima, which obviously is kind of like lower on the chart of endangerment, and now they're pretty much brought to back population as well. Another one is the small primate, the golden lion tamarin. Obviously lower populations as well, but with a lot of efforts within the animal community have brought the population up and sent them back into the wild to where it belongs in its home, its natural home. And one of my favorite stories, obviously this animal has been pretty popularized from some of the movies, just like Rio, and is the Sphinx macaw. Now this blue, beautiful, gorgeous macaw was actually really, really endangered. Until, you know, once a lot of animal efforts kind of came together. It's a really beautiful story if you want to research that and check that out. It's yeah, they brought the population back up and sent them back into the wild, so now the Sphinx macaw is back home. And the national animal of Brazil is the jaguar, or jaguar. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's Brazil in a nutshell. Obviously if you want to look more deeper, go ahead, you know, research things like that. But as far as that, if there's any other countries you want me to try and look into, you know, kind of talk about, let me know in the comments. Like I said, hit that like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But until then, thank you guys. Appreciate you guys so much. But yeah, until then, guys, obrigado por assistir. Inscreva-se, curta e até o próximo vídeo. Tchau.